Good morning, everybody. How are you? This is Dr. Akala Kamaat, also known as Dr. Jennifer R. Warren, also known as Akma, Asha Kamara, Raquel Richards. I can go on and on and on about the many names that um, I've been blessed to carry, um, and even Daz Madel at one time. But I'm here today to talk about something that's part of the power of release, and some of the questions that I get about the power of release are really dealing with life purpose. So I've decided to do some video teachings on why unfolding your life purpose is about release, and it's not about discovery or striving. And so I did write some notes down to make this as succinct as possible because I do tend to talk a lot. Um, as I have discussed in other posts, the power of release, the book, the understanding evolved from what I had gone through, what I was going through, what I was sitting in life, and really wanting to understand why I was put on this earth. What is my purpose? And, I did a Google of, you know, um, what is my life purpose? And I realized that this question is asked over and over and over again in different variations in Google search. So the idea of life purpose and how to discover it, how to not discover it, but how to realize it, unfold it, is something that many, many millions of people, of beautiful souls, question within themselves and in Google search quite a lot. So, why is unfolding life purpose about release? So one of my major part of components of this philosophy, of this way of looking at self-realization, is that purpose is never missing. It is constrained. And so most people are not disconnected from their purpose, not at all. They are compressed by what they have learned to hold. And to hold, I mean to grab onto, to attach to synergize with, okay? And this happens from early life. So early on, we inherit expectations about who we should be, what is acceptable, and what is necessary for belonging. And so I'm sure many of us can relate to those inherent expectations about who we should be. Um, and I use myself as an example because a lot of my understandings of this and the world evolved from me. As a Black feminist, is about standpoint theory. My experience is how I understand the world. So early on, and I'm just going to go, not from the very beginning, but my mom was very interested in moving me into the realm of dance, right? Tap, ballet, jazz, gymnastics, all of that. And so this was an expectation about who I was beginning about 9, right? And even when I wanted to quit, and I didn't go on to my first recital at 9, maybe it was earlier than that, perhaps 7 or 8. Next time, and there was an expectation that I will continue. And I continued because I want to make my mom happy, right? It made her happy that I was doing dance. And so as I grew up, that was just a part of the expectation. I would stay in dance. She put money, time, her effort behind this. So it was something that was deemed acceptable for me to pursue, even into college. And what was necessary for belonging, and that belonging is within my relationship with my mom, that in many ways revolved around this dance expectation. And that's what I thought I was for 25 years, okay? And yes, I have many 25 years. I'm going on my last third of my 25-year cycles. And my friendship circles were based on dance. So belonging in that way was based on dance, right? And so my purpose was tied to my mother's purpose for me. That was the expectation. Being fit, whenever I got overweight, it was a problem that she had to address. What I ate, who my friends were, it was all sort of constrained and controlled. The thing about it is, on the other side of that, I realized that purpose doesn't disappear under these conditions. And I mean purpose, my authentically driven journey. Because it wasn't just dance. As a matter of fact, I left dance after a while because all the sexism and the extra expectations that were placed on me that I just didn't feel free in. And so that did not suppress or diminish or eradicate my purpose. Those conditions didn't. It was just inaccessible. And from that period, I sort of went from thing to thing, searching, trying to find who was me, attaching to these expectations of finding self through what I did. And the release in that is the act of releasing or loosening what is the restriction, what restricts the access to what is already present. Now, don't get me wrong, many of us have these parental, familial pressures to be and behave in a certain way. There's nothing wrong with that. If within that development, we are able to ascertain the ways in which our authentic self, our desires, our needs are synergized within that sort of reality and how they can be expressed within that reality, right? So purpose is there. And maybe this is a Gen X issue. You know, we were raised differently from Gen Z. Gen Zers seem to just know, right? There's a knowing and an expression. But for some of us who are evolving through the Gen X years, there were some serious expectations on who we had to be. And also part of this is something I called inherited holding. So much of what we call our identity, because that authentic purpose is tied to an authentic understanding of self, an authentic understanding of our identity, right? And so it can be impacted by inherited holding. And what I mean by that is we carry stories, roles, fears, and responsibilities that did not originate with us. And yes, our parents are there. They give us those. At the same time, there's generational survival based on my mother, my mother's sisters, my mother's mother, my mother's and her aunts, right? My mother's mother, right? My great-grandmother, the aunts, and then this ancestral holding or survival becomes imprinted many times in our DNA. They call it epigenetic, epigenetic sort of conditioning within our DNA, where the environment crafts our DNA in certain ways that is a memory imprinted on the generations that are to come, unless there's something that breaks the cycle of whatever that generational imprint is. And so this generational survival, we're taught by our families and our communities of what is unsafe to express and what has to be contained. And in that being unsafe about what's to express, in that it's what is safe to express. And I know for many people, and in particular Black women, there's this idea of the strong Black woman, and that has evolved into the superwoman, which many women have had to be. And that superwoman or strong Black woman is a generational holding imprinted on many of imprinted within many of us, on ourselves, on our identity, on how we know how to be. And sometimes being that strong person is about not sharing our emotions, being invulnerable, portraying ourselves as invulnerable, caring for everybody else but us, persevering many times through very meager resources. And this idea of how to be a woman is passed on generationally. And over time, these strategies solidify into our identity. People call us strong. Women still call themselves strong. And in my estimation, this is a language or a word that diminishes the ultimate power, the realization of the power of our spirit. It diminishes it and makes it into an act, a strength, strong. You can rip, you can pull, you can carry a big burden. That's not why we were placed here. That's not why we are here. And forgive the change of the video. That's not why we're here, to bear a burden. But the bearer of a burden is what we become, whether that's sacrificing ourselves to care for our families, our children long after it's time for them to fly. Yeah. To being the role of the housewife, the supporter of the man, strong for that, sacrificing our own needs. You got to be strong to sacrifice self. Nobody put us here on this earth to be a martyr, okay? But these things become embedded, imprinted in our DNA, and they become part of our identity because our purpose is just that, to be strong, to be invulnerable, to persevere regardless of what's around us, to not show our emotions because it would be a burden to others or would reveal how weak we are, right? All those things that go along with being strong, of course, are tied to some very serious health outcomes: depression, anxiety, hopelessness, helplessness, low sense of self-worth, low self-esteem, chronic diseases such as high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, may I go on, and can even feed into the malignant cells that give birth to cancer and other things, leukemia and the like. So our purpose cannot unfold through identities built for survival because they make us sick spiritually, psychically, emotionally. Did I say mentally, physically, all that? It makes us sick on every level because we're out of balance, right? And so that's part of understanding what needs to be released. So the idea of the learning that we get in our families and in society, the inherited holding we get through our genetic structure, and how that generational, and I would say trauma, is manifest within our mothers, so that we, I'm talking to women, are then taking that up. These are two things that are points of reflection for release. And then we get into our social systems, right? Social systems teach us who to be before we ever ask who we are. We come out, and this may make some people mad, but we're placed into two genders. I remember one time, when I was in a college student, I did a lot of, I was an anthropology minor, and I did a lot of reading about cultures all across the world. And I remember one time, and I was reading a book around Mexico, and also India. There seemed to be a continuum for all understandings of gender expression. But here in America in particular, and other parts of Western Europe, there's two, male and female. And so we're taught, even before we ask, we're shown many times we can be surgically changed into male or female. And I say surgical manipulation because a hermaphrodite may come out with both genitalia. And then the one that's most dominant will be left, and the one that's not will be changed to not reveal itself. That's manipulation. And so we're given our names before we even ask who we are. My name is Jennifer Raquel Warren. That's who I was named by my mother and my father. Jennifer was one of the top 8 names in the year I was born. I never knew why my mom named me, and my dad named me Jennifer. I just understood it as it was popular at the time. But yes, in that social system, the naming happens before or upon the birth, right? That's something that's a norm or more, M-O-R-E, in society that people practice. Some societies, children don't get their name until much later on. Some cultures in America, there's a intuitive or a mystic that comes into the family after the birth to then intuitively and synergize with the divine source to name the child. Those are outliers. That doesn't happen a lot here. And so the way in which our society teaches us is really made salient within this understanding of social constructionism by Berger and Luckman. It's a book that I read years and years ago. It's a book, though, that has always stayed with me, and the idea of social constructionism and the social constructs, right? So when we think about our life purpose and the idea of unfolding, social constructions shape our sense of worth, success, morality, productivity, and normalcy, right? So our sense of worth, being a woman, right? My sense of worth is being desirable to men. Okay, that's bare bones. There could be many other layers to that, but I'm just speaking starkly. As a woman, I'm defined as such because of the man, right? That's the opposite. And so my worth at being a woman is contingent upon attention and being taken up by a man. My sense of worth, how well I can perform feminism, right? My sense of worth. And so success. In my book, The Power of Release, I do talk about my sense of success was based on climbing to the top of the ladder and then gritting it out to make it, right? To make it in that realm, which was killing me. Psychically, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. And did I say physically? But I was told I had to be a success, particularly as a Black woman. If I wasn't at the top and successful, then who was I? What was I to be in a society that already saw me as not being capable of reaching that degree of success, right? Who was I with the stereotypes that said I was a welfare queen, a Jezebel, only a strong Black woman, which is a beast of burden, really, in a society that communicated this to me forever. Ever since I can remember, it's still egregious in our media discourse and in our politics, right? And so that desire to gain that success, to gain respect, was key. And that was my purpose. That was my identity. Productivity, yes, work like a horse. Be the beast of burden, because many of the situations that I put myself in society believed that that's how I had to operate, and created space for me to operate in that way. And I've seen other women operate like this, workaholic all the time. And that's not even, look, being a mom is put into that too. You're cooking, you're working, you're on all the time. Even when you're asleep, your ears are open, the slightest ping and you're up. Productivity. And many times, yes, we have to do for our children. But remember, that's aligned with this idea of being strong, right? That we don't care for ourselves. So the productivity restricts our capacity to self-care. And the normalcy that comes with this social construction we live in, I want to be normal. The husband, the wife, the 2 kids, the good car, the good job. As a single mom, I want to be normal in the way that I continue to aspire to the highest heights that I can. Set up for failure for everyone who does that. But these, and it's natural, right? So these frameworks are powerful because they feel natural. They feel natural. And when I talk to people who don't want to engage, it's because it's a questioning of the construction that they hold so dearly. It feels natural. Like we go through life and don't question or reflect on any of that. Why would we? It's easy. It's normal. We have what we need many times, except a real understanding of our beautiful soul, our spirit that's here to do something. We close our ears to it. Religion does that a lot. It's normal. Look, I was a religious person, a charismatic Christian for a very long time. And then a Baptist, white Baptist, go figure that. I wasn't white, but the Baptist tradition was white. But in those frameworks, the questioning about anything outside the Bible didn't work. To be normal was to ask the question and then find the answer in the book or in other Christians and other study groups and the like. So you're never really reflecting outside of those frameworks. And that becomes natural and very resistant to anybody who does not believe in a God or religion, right? And that naturalness, that which is natural to us, closes off our senses to what else there could be and what more we can realize about ourselves, because we're happy. We go to church, we have our family, we have our job, we have our retirement, monies, we have everything. So why question that? Look, I agree. Why question something that's just comfortable, and works. Well, for me and those like me, those things, it's hard to feel a part of those things. We can force ourselves, but there's a stress and a strain there. And those people who are not stressing and straining, well, they're conditioned to be in that place. And just like with, trauma-informed care, we accept people where they're at. If that works, that works. Right? And so we have that, purpose is constrained about what we're taught, just overall. Purpose is constrained, and in that identity is by inherited holding, generational lessons about who we are, social systems. They constrain us and have us holding on to external ideations of our purpose and our identity, and it feels so natural. And, I could go on right now, but we're moving into the 30-minute mark of this teaching. Lastly, purpose unfolds through subtraction, not accumulation, right? So many people just buy, 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 buy. First of all, you're functioning in the way society wants you to function as a consumer. America is all about having a population of people that buy to make this system work, right? So we're cogs in the wheels because we buy, 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 buy. Okay? We are taught to add things to our lives, in pursuit of purpose, right? More kids, more clothes, different clothes, but more of those different clothes, cars, rituals, all kind of stuff. We just keep bringing to us from the outside in, not from the inside out. And in reality, purpose only emerges through removal, getting rid of the obligations that are false. Now, we can choose to do something. That's not an obligation, that's a choice. But many of the things we do, we feel obligated to do. Over-identification, right? People go overboard about their Christianity to the point where they lose friends many times, right? Or people can't even talk to them about certain things. That's a big problem. But over-identification as a mom, as a wife, as a, oh, I'm successful because of this job, over-identification. And then we take up fear-based roles, like I can't do anything else because if I do, things are going to fall apart. I won't have any money. I won't be able to do this, that, this, what I call the scarcity mindset, which is key in everything about us. In every single thing, we are scared about the opposite. I have all this to fill the holes in myself many times. If I release this, I'll have nothing. Fear-based understandings, life philosophies, core belief, roles, and behavior. And so release ultimately creates internal space where purpose can be felt rather than forced on you, rather than you being placed into the scheme of things. And remember, the scheme of things is not something that we created. It was a template given to us in this society. And so the power of release begins with reflection. It begins with sitting with self or looking around and seeing what's happening in your life. And what's happening in your life and the emotions that are attached to that. So if we're looking around our life and we're seeing pockets where we're unfulfilled or sad, then that could be significant of holding on to something that just is not working. And that's a very simplistic way to approach this at the beginning, and it's very effective. Looking at all the spheres. And if you don't have the sphere, don't worry about it. So like career, family roles, sibling roles, religious roles, places, or obligations, where I feel obligated to act, and where are the emotions, what are they tied to in that particular context or situation. I really have this fundamental belief that with all the anxiety and depression that's sweeping across the population in America, speaks to a wariness of holding on to these social constructions, these things that tell us who we are. And we're lost. We can't find self in those things. And so what else is there to get depressed? Suicidality, helplessness, hopelessness, because what else is there if I move out of this thing? So the power of release is to understand what these feelings, these feelings, these emotions, there's another word that I can't come up, this discomfort. Where is this being felt in your life? If it's overall, it's time for an overhaul, right? It's really time to release, to reflect. So release starts with that step. Once we identify the role, the obligation, the external thing that we believe is critical for us to live and be, and the emotions that are attached with it. And these emotions usually are, and I'm happy. But are you happy? Even a positive emotion, say something. If you're happy all the way around, then that deserves reflection too, not because it's wrong, but if you're sitting in comfort in every way, shape, or form, that speaks to perhaps being closed off to fully expressing yourself and your purpose and your identity. So identifying these contexts, situations, the emotions that are tied with them, and the ones that are most profound, the ones that emerge as something that's a priority to you. Pull those prioritized things, contexts, situations, aspirations, pull them aside, and the emotions, and they become points of reflection through journal writing. What does this mean? Who am I in this role? Why do I feel this way? And allowing yourself just to, what I used to call, throw up on the page. Don't censor yourself in the writing. You just let it all go. And for those of us who may have moved into an advanced or understand the meditative components, going into meditation and sitting with these contexts, or the prioritized one with a context, or the emotion that you're feeling, and allowing the silence to open up a channel for hearing your inner voice. And in that, gaining insight. So those are the first steps. The power of release process, which I hold, right? Provide stages and steps and phases and tools and techniques that have worked for me and probably many others. But some of this work cannot be done in isolation because many of us are not equipped to truly go through the unfolding alone, because it does take some level of awakening to unfold. That's why we have teachers, guides, and the like. In order to get to that teacher and that guide, for those who are skeptical, do the little listing. What's the situation? How do I feel? For those of us who already know there's something more, what the hell am I doing? It's time to find a guide. It's time to find a teacher, to move through the next layers, right? And so this is just a little bit of teaching on, the power of release and the idea of, why is unfolding your life purpose and in that your identity about release and not discovery or striving. If you're trying to discover and you're striving, within my philosophy of self-realization, that's already moot. It's already antithetical. It's oxymoronic to wanting to do self-realization by trying to be an adventurer, discoverer, and then striving to do that. They cancel each other out because you're still caught up in your nervous system. The nervous system is about fight or flight, stress, strain. And there's nothing about unfolding that should be stressful from where I sit. So as you all know, and if you don't, I'm gonna tell you, my book, where I tell my story and the phases I went through to get to the other side, and that is the other side of unfolding the awesomeness within me, right? And that is authentic purpose and authentic sense of self. The book is The Power of Release, Journeying from a Closed Fist to an Open Hand. It's available through Amazon. And I discuss this on my social media outlets, Facebook, TikTok, as well as Instagram. And so my goal is to do these every Sunday, to have a teaching. And it is my hope that they will do something for someone. They say one person, if one person receives and can utilize this in some way, then I'm happy, right? I'm happy. You have a phenomenally blessed rest of whatever this day is for you. And remember, you're a beautiful soul, and you're not here to suffer. You're not here to live a life being dissatisfied. You're not here to have your choices determined for you. Okay, we have to operate with this sort of framework. I acknowledge that, but we're not here to have our choices determined for us by some outside source. Walk in power, beautiful soul. Thank you.